So, when you crash on the couch after a really long day and just turn on Netflix, it honestly feels like turning on a faucet.
Right, the water just flows, the entertainment flows.
Exactly, yeah. But if you were to actually, rip the drywall out behind your television, you wouldn't find a simple pipe.
Oh, definitely not. You would find an absolute beast of a machine.
Right, you'd find this multi-billion-dollar algorithmic engine that's just calculating every genre, every pixel, and every single fraction of a second of your attention.
And I think the craziest part is that machine is constantly rewriting its own rules.
Yeah.
Like while you are watching it, it is actively studying you. It's analyzing when you pause, when you scroll, what you watch while eating dinner versus what you throw on during a Tuesday morning commute.
Which is exactly why we are doing this deep dive today. We are looking directly at the blueprints of that engine.
The real under the hood stuff.
Totally. We are decoding the biggest entertainment company in the world through the incredibly revealing lens of Netflix's Q2 2026 earnings call.
Which, is a document that most people completely ignore.
Oh, 100%. People just assume earnings calls are these dry, boring recitations of spreadsheets meant for Wall Street analysts in tailored suits.
Right, but for retail investors, or really anyone who just cares about media, these transcripts are actually the strategic blueprints of our culture.
Yeah, if you want to know the real reason why a specific South Korean drama is suddenly pushed to the top of your homepage.
Or why there's a cloud game sitting right next to your favorite movie.
Exactly. This is where you find out. It's where executives are basically forced to reveal their actual philosophy of human attention.
And the numbers to back it up.
Right. So our goal today, our mission for this deep dive, is to decode this massive transformation. Netflix is no longer just that straightforward subscription service where you binge watch a couple of TV shows on a rainy Sunday.
No, they are actively mutating. They're becoming this sprawling entertainment ecosystem.
Yeah, we are talking live sports, daytime talk show podcasts, cloud gaming, and behind-the-scenes generative AI that is fundamentally changing the economics of how movies are actually made.
It's a completely different company now.
It really is. So the central question we have to figure out for you, the listener, especially if you are looking at the stock, is how a company that is already sitting in hundreds of millions of living rooms plans to find its next billion viewers.
Because the physics of growth completely change when you are already a giant.
Right.
The strategies that got you the first 100 million subscribers are totally obsolete when you're chasing the next 100 million. You have to start colonizing entirely different dimensions of the entertainment landscape.
I want to start right there, actually, with the ceiling of their ambition. Because if you just look around, it feels like Netflix is literally everywhere.
Everybody has it.
Right. Everyone you know has a login, whether it's theirs or, let's be real, someone else's. So how much room do they actually have left to grow before they just run out of human beings on planet Earth?
Well, that is the existential question for their stock price, right? And the management team's response in this Q2 2026 call is honestly staggering.
Give us the headline numbers.
So management is projecting a 13 to 13% top-line revenue growth for the full year of 2026.
Wow.
Yeah. If you translate that percentage into raw dollars, that is roughly $6 billion in incremental revenue year over year.
Okay, let's put that $6 billion number in perspective for you guys listening. $6 billion in incremental revenue isn't their total revenue.
No, not at all.
That is just the new money they are adding this year. That new growth alone is basically the size of a massive standalone legacy corporation, just bolted onto what they already make.
Exactly. And they justify that massive projection by outlining their total addressable market. The executives claim that they are currently under 45% penetrated into an estimated 800 million addressable broadband households globally.
Wait, under 45%? So they see more than half the global board as completely open territory.
Yeah, and it gets even deeper when you look at the financials.
Yeah.
They estimate the total addressable revenue market, so that encompasses all the countries they operate in, plus pay TV, film, gaming, branded advertising. They estimate that at about $670 billion.
Okay, $670 billion. And what's their slice of that?
Netflix believes they are currently capturing just 7% of that revenue market.
7%. That's it.
That's it. And when they look at total global TV viewing share, like the actual time spent watching screens, they estimate they hold just 5%.
Okay, 7% of the money and 5% of the time. When you frame it like that, the illusion that they've eaten the whole pie completely shatters.
Yeah, they've barely had a slice.
But, I'm looking at the data from the call, and this is where I want to push back. Total view hours grew 2% in the first half of 2026. That's an extra 1.5 billion hours relative to last year, which is a slight acceleration from the 1.5% growth we saw in 2025. But 2% doesn't sound like a company taking massive bites out of a $670 billion market.
And that is exactly where a lot of retail investors get tripped up. Because this is where we see a massive philosophical shift in how Netflix measures its own success.
Break that down for us.
So Netflix is explicitly telling Wall Street right now that there is no longer a linear relationship between total view hours and revenue.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. For 20 years, the company operated on the simplest metric possible.
Yeah.
Raw hours. They just wanted you staring at the screen for the maximum amount of time.
Right, the ultimate couch potato metric.
Exactly. An hour was an hour, whether it was an Oscar-winning film or like a trashy reality dating show. Just keep the eyeballs locked by any means necessary.
But they've moved past that.
They have totally evolved past that.
Yeah.
They state in this transcript that they've gone through about a dozen major iterations of understanding user engagement. And they now evaluate it across 3 distinct dimensions.
Which are?
Quality, variety, and quantity. They realize that not all hours provide the same economic or psychological value to the business.
I want to make sure we understand the mechanics of this because it's crucial for understanding the stock. How is 1 hour of my time worth more to Netflix than another hour of my time?
Well, the earnings call provides a brilliant mathematical illustration using live programming.
Okay, let's hear it.
Netflix expects live events, so think live sports or live comedy specials, to make up roughly 5% of their total content budget this year.
5% of the budget.
Right. However, they project that those same live events will only yield 1% of their total view hours.
Okay, on paper, that sounds like a horrible return on investment.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you spend 5% of your cash to get 1% of the audience's time. If I'm looking at the margins, I'm screaming.
It looks terrible until you measure the quality dimension of that engagement. Management points out that 6 of their top 10 new member sign-up days over the past 5 years came directly from live events.
Oh, wow. So it's not about the hours, it's about the acquisition.
Exactly. Live events drive acquisition. They create massive internet fandom. And crucially, they drive premium ad revenue because advertisers want to be near live, unskippable cultural moments.
That makes sense.
So the quality of that engagement is incredibly high in terms of its impact on the bottom line, even if the raw quantity of hours is tiny.
Let's compare that to the complete opposite end of the spectrum, because the transcript highlights kids and family animation next.
Yes, and this is the perfect foil. Animation also makes up about 5% of their content budget. So it's the exact same financial investment as live events.
Okay.
But animation is expected to drive 8% of total view hours.
Wait, 8%? So for the exact same amount of cash, animation delivers 8 times the raw viewing hours that live events do.
Because children will watch the exact same 90-minute movie on a loop 50 times in 1 month.
Oh my God, yes they will. Any parent listening knows this pain.
Exactly. It is a completely different mechanism of engagement.
Yeah.
Live events are about acquisition getting you in the door. Kids animation is about retention.
Keeping the household subscribed month after month because the service has essentially become an indispensable parenting utility.
You got it.
So think about the layout of a massive department store, right? The live sports and big stand-up specials are like the flashy, expensive window displays at the front.
I like that analogy.
Right. You spend a fortune designing those windows, not because people live in them, but because they make people stop on the sidewalk and actually walk through the front doors. They drive foot traffic.
Yes.
But the kids' animation series, those are the everyday staples in the back aisles. The milk, the bread, the paper towels, that's what keeps the customer coming back every single week, justifying that monthly credit card charge.
That is the perfect way to conceptualize their strategy. The window display acquires the user, and the back aisles retain the user. And Netflix needs both dimensions functioning flawlessly to maintain their pricing power.
They need that extreme variety to support the different emotional needs of a single household over the course of a single day.
Absolutely.
But I do have to challenge this logic from an investor standpoint.
Sure, hit me.
If total viewing hour growth continues to slow down, like we said, from 1.5% to 2% to maybe, I don't know, flatlining, At what point does that become a massive red flag?
It's a fair question.
If that absolute quantity number plateaus, can management really just wave their hands and say, don't worry, guys, the quality is higher?
Well, the management team actually anticipated that exact pushback on the call. They made it very clear that they remain intently focused on growing the absolute quantity number too.
Okay, so they aren't totally abandoning the raw hours.
No, they aren't abandoning it. They're just contextualizing it. Their argument is that if they balance quality and variety correctly, member satisfaction rises. And high satisfaction leads to industry-leading retention.
Which lowers churn.
Exactly. Lower churn gives them the leverage to command stronger advertiser demand, and ultimately, it increases the members' willingness to pay a higher subscription fee down the road.
Got it. But stocking those massive back aisles with fresh inventory while simultaneously building new, incredibly expensive window displays requires a hyper-efficient content machine.
It's not cheap.
No. So let's look at how they are actually spending their money to fuel this, because their overall content expense is up 10% this year.
Right.
Now, the executives were very quick to massage that number. They pointed out that while 10% is higher than their recent 5-year average of 8%, it's actually lower than their 10-year historical average of 14%.
They're carefully crafting a narrative of disciplined growth for the market here. They used a very specific piece of financial jargon on the call, emphasizing their, quote, operating leverage.
Yes, let's define that for the listener, because you hear operating leverage thrown around constantly in these earnings calls, but it often just sounds like generic corporate speak.
In plain English, operating leverage simply means your revenues are growing faster than your costs.
So the math works in their favor.
Precisely. Netflix is telling investors, yes, we're spending 10% more on content this year, but our top-line revenue is growing by 14%.
And as long as that gap exists, the business becomes exponentially more profitable.
Right. They are assuring the market that the days of reckless, blank check spending on every single pitch in Hollywood are completely over.
The peak TV bubble has burst.
Exactly. And despite all the new verticals we will get to later, the vast majority of this incredibly disciplined budget still goes into their core traditional TV series and feature films.
And their slate for Q2 2026 really highlights this hyper-local global traveling strategy they've been perfecting. They mention a show called I Will Find You, which was their biggest original series launch of the year.
Yeah, massive hit.
They bring up Swapped, an animated film on track to be their second biggest original animated film ever. But where the strategy gets incredibly aggressive is their international reach.
This is their real secret weapon.
Yeah, they highlighted Teach You a Lesson, a K-drama that is on track to be the biggest South Korean series on Netflix of all time and the second most watched South Korean show globally.
The ability of these local shows to break out of their regional borders and travel globally is Netflix's true competitive moat. Traditional networks simply cannot do this.
No, NBC isn't broadcasting a K-drama to Middle America.
Exactly. They also highlighted a show called Rosario Tierra out of Latin America. The history of this specific show is a masterclass in data-driven programming.
I loved this part of the transcript. Tell them how this started.
It actually started its life as a licensed traditional television show on TV Azteca in Mexico. It had 3 successful seasons on regular broadcast television.
Or just normal cable TV.
Right. But Netflix saw how well those old seasons performed on their platform, so they bought the rights, produced an original season 4 and season 5, and just launched season 6.
So they basically used their data to identify someone else's regional hit, swallowed it whole, and scaled it into their own original global franchise.
It's ruthless, but brilliant.
It is. But there's one example from this call that I think reveals the most dangerous threat to traditional Hollywood studios. The executives highlighted a show called The Polygamist.
Oh, yeah.
They noted this probably wasn't on the radar of American financial analysts, but it is a massive dominant hit out of the EMEA region, so Europe, the Middle East, and Africa.
The origin of The Polygamist is what makes it so fascinating. It was actually adapted from a popular Zimbabwean novel written by Sue Naithi over a decade ago.
A 10-year-old regional novel, Netflix's local teams adapted it into a soapy series for South Africa, and the result, 24 million views in just 5 weeks.
Insane.
And it's not just playing in South Africa, it's traveling globally.
Right. And if we look closely at the strategy behind adapting The Polygamist, it reveals a highly sophisticated approach to sourcing IP or intellectual property.
Which is usually the most expensive part of making a movie or show.
Exactly. Think about the traditional Hollywood ecosystem. Studios fight tooth and nail, bidding hundreds of millions of dollars just to acquire the rights to familiar franchises.
Right. They want comic book universes, best-selling American sci-fi novels, or video game characters.
It is an incredibly expensive, highly saturated battlefield.
Every legacy studio is chasing the exact same expensive dragons. They all want the next Marvel universe or the next Harry Potter.
But Netflix is playing a completely different game here. They realize that a great story is a great story regardless of where it originates.
Yeah.
By empowering local teams to adapt a 10-year-old Zimbabwean novel into a South African drama, they are sourcing incredibly rich, proven storytelling at a fraction of the cost of a Hollywood bidding war.
They are finding cheap, highly effective IP in regional markets.
And then using their global distribution algorithm to instantly serve that content to audiences in Europe, Asia, and the Americas who are just desperate for fresh narratives. They bypass the expensive Hollywood bottleneck entirely.
It's amazing for their margins. But, this global discovery algorithm brings up a major critique that several analysts threw at Netflix during the Q&A portion of the call.
The binge model critique.
Right. It's the narrative of the season 2 drop-off. The critique is that because Netflix releases all of their episodes at once, the classic binge model, the engagement just falls off a cliff when the second season rolls around because the initial hype was completely unsustainable.
Management pushed back on this narrative quite forcefully, actually. They stated unequivocally that they are not seeing any material degradation in second season viewing compared to season 1's.
Which is hard to believe, honestly.
Well, they went further. They claimed that across their entire portfolio, season 2 retention actually slightly improved this year relative to historical averages.
But they did acknowledge that massive drop-offs between seasons happen frequently, right?
They did, yes.
Yeah.
But they explained the underlying mechanism of why it happened, and it's rooted entirely in the mathematics of their specific release model.
Break that down.
When Netflix releases a new show, they don't air it weekly on a Tuesday at 9 p.m. They drop it all at once, and they blast it out through the most powerful discovery mechanism on the entire internet, the Netflix homepage.
The homepage is basically the ultimate global billboard. You log in, and the new show is auto-playing a trailer taking up half your screen.
Exactly. This enables them to manufacture a massive audience instantaneously, so their shows start artificially huge.
Compared to regular TV.
Right. A traditional broadcast network show starts small, relies on word of mouth, and might slowly build an audience over weeks, months, or even years. Netflix shows capture everyone on planet Earth on day one.
Because it's literally shoved in their face.
Yes. Therefore, a massive drop-off in season 2 isn't necessarily a sign that the show lost its quality. It's just mathematical gravity.
Okay, so you cast a net so incredibly wide in season 1 because of the homepage megaphone that you inevitably capture millions of casual viewers who are never, ever going to be long-term fans in the first place.
Precisely. The core dedicated audience remains for season 2. But the raw viewership numbers look smaller simply because the season 1 peak was artificially inflated.
That makes total sense when you look at the data.
And because this binge model generates such a massive initial splash, management confirmed on this call that they have zero plans to revert to a traditional weekly episode drop model for their scripted series.
I want to challenge this philosophy, though, just as an observer of culture. Think about the last time you watched a Netflix show that was like the biggest thing in the world for 3 weeks. And then by season 2, you couldn't even remember the main character's name. If their algorithm is basically a massive megaphone, aren't they inadvertently training the viewer to treat these shows as completely disposable?
That's a very valid point.
Like if the Polygamist gets 24 million views in 5 weeks, but then fades into obscurity because the megaphone has moved on to the next shiny object, is it truly a cultural hit? Are we sacrificing long-term cultural permanence, the shows we talk about for years, in exchange for 5-week algorithmic spikes?
That is probably the most profound critique of the entire streaming era. The traditional weekly release model kept a show in the cultural zeitgeist for 3 months. It forced a water cooler conversation.
You had to wait to talk about it on Wednesday morning.
Right. The Netflix model is a burst of intense global heat, followed by a rapid freezing cooling period. However, we have to look at this from Netflix's corporate perspective, looking at their revenue.
True. They don't care about the water cooler.
They don't. They aren't trying to manufacture moments that last for months. They are trying to ensure that every single time you open the app on your phone or your television, there is a new burst of heat waiting to distract you.
They are optimizing for the platform's overall relevance, not the individual show's longevity.
Exactly. They don't need one show to last 10 weeks. They just need 10 shows to last 1 week each.
That is a great way to put it. And while these global soaps and big budget movies remain their core product, there is a massive section of this transcript dedicated to Netflix expanding into formats that do not look like traditional television at all.
This is where the growth story gets really wild.
It does. Let's look at live events because the cross-pollination they are executing here is just unbelievable. During the call, they highlighted their broadcast of the Major League Baseball Home Run Derby.
Which is a big deal on its own.
It is. Acquiring live sports is a standard play for streaming networks now, but it's what Netflix actually did on the field that is so revealing.
Oh, the Hot Ones crossover.
Yes. They shot an exclusive episode of the hit interview show Hot Ones, you know, the YouTube show where celebrities eat insanely spicy chicken wings.
I love that show.
Me too. And they showed it right there on the baseball field during the Derby. And guest eating the wings, Will Ferrell.
Right.
Why? To cross-promote his brand new Netflix original scripted series, The Hawk, which launched the exact same day.
If you pause and analyze the strategic architecture of that single event, it is an absolute masterclass in maximizing the return on a production budget.
Break it down for us.
In one highly localized moment, they layered 3 entirely different entertainment verticals. First, you have live sports, which brings in a massive, immediate ad-friendly audience.
Which advertisers pay top dollar for.
Exactly. Second, you have an exclusive creator partnership with Sean Evans from Hot Ones, which deliberately taps into the massive YouTube and internet culture demographic that honestly might not care about baseball at all.
Yay, they just want to see the wings.
And third, you have Will Ferrell promoting a core, prestige scripted series.
It's the ultimate synergistic flex. They are squeezing every conceivable drop of value out of that stadium rental. And speaking of baseball, they also spent a lot of time discussing the World Baseball Classic in Japan.
Yes, the World Baseball Classic became their most watched program ever in Japan. It was the biggest baseball streaming event in the country's history.
Huge.
But the key takeaway management noted was how these live events function within the subscription model. They stated that these massive live sports events behave exactly like the returning season of a huge hit show.
Meaning they drive signups.
Right. They drive a disproportionate spike in new signups on the day of the event.
They do acknowledge in the transcript, though, that these events exhibit slightly higher churn, meaning a lot of people sign up just to watch the baseball game and then cancel their subscription the next morning.
They do, but management claims this aligns perfectly with their financial modeling. Even with the higher churn, the net acquisition remains highly positive.
So they still make money.
Yes, and more importantly, it creates a cultural event that associates the Netflix brand with live, unmissable moments.
So sports are a massive acquisition driver, but here is the pivot that I think fundamentally changes what Netflix actually is.
The audio and lifestyle push.
Yes. They are launching lifestyle content next month with legacy magazine publishers like Condé Nast, Hearst, and People. But far more significantly, they are pushing aggressively into video podcasts.
This is huge.
They've secured massive names. Jay Shetty's On Purpose is now exclusively on Netflix. They have The Breakfast Club, Martha Stewart, Kate and Oliver Hudson, Bill Simmons, Pete Davidson, Brian Williams, and even an official Bridgerton behind-the-scenes podcast.
This is perhaps the most strategically significant move outlined in the entire earnings call.
Really? More than the sports?
Yes, and to understand why, you have to look at the history of streaming. For a decade, the primary battleground for Netflix was the living room television between the hours of 7:00 p.m. and 11:00 p.m.
The digital prime time.
Right. That was when you sat down to watch a 2-hour movie or binge a prestige drama. And guess what? Netflix won that battle. They totally dominate the living room.
Yeah, nobody's beating them there.
But human attention exists outside of those 4 evening hours.
Right. So Netflix realized the war for the 8 p.m. living room is over. The only way to double their revenue now is to conquer the hours where a television isn't even in the room.
The morning commute, the gym, the lunch break at the office.
Exactly. And who historically dominates those daytime hours? Spotify for audio podcasts, YouTube for vertical video and video podcasts, and traditional daytime talk radio.
Yes. By integrating video podcasts and, as they explicitly mentioned on the call, short-form vertical video clips designed specifically for mobile viewing, Netflix is actively colonizing the daytime hours.
They are going after YouTube directly.
They are. Management noted that professional, long-form cinematic content traditionally under-indexes on mobile devices.
Well, yeah, because nobody wants to watch a 2.5-hour Martin Scorsese film on a 6-inch phone screen while standing on a crowded subway. The format just doesn't match the environment.
But they will watch a 20-minute video of Jay Shetty talking about mindfulness, or a hilarious 5-minute clip from The Breakfast Club while they eat lunch.
It's snackable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Netflix is transitioning the subscription from a premium evening destination into an all-day companion platform. They are meeting their members where they actually spend their time.
But wait, let me stop you there, because are they actually going to beat Spotify and YouTube at their own game? Audio and short-form video are completely different consumer habits than sitting down to watch a screen.
It's a risk, for sure.
If I'm paying a premium monthly fee for high-end, ad-free entertainment, do I really want my Netflix homepage cluttered with podcast clips and vertical videos? Can they become the everything store for entertainment without diluting or completely losing their prestige cinematic identity?
That is the incredibly thin tightrope they are attempting to walk right now. Management explicitly called this an evolutionary, not revolutionary expansion.
What does that mean in practice?
They compared it to when they first added unscripted reality dating shows and stand-up comedy to a platform that was previously known only for high-end dramas, like The Crown.
Oh, I remember that. People were furious.
Right. There was immense anxiety back then that trashy reality TV would ruin their prestige brand. But it didn't. It only expanded their reach. To be the true everything store, you literally have to offer something for every possible human mood.
And speaking of entirely new moods, we have to talk about their most ambitious and potentially most expensive swing: gaming.
Yes, the cloud gaming bet.
The transcript highlights that the cloud gaming market is estimated at a staggering $150 billion in consumer spend, and that $150 billion excludes China, Russia, and entirely excludes advertising revenue.
It is a colossal addressable market, and Netflix has been quietly building the infrastructure for this for years.
And now they are finally showing their cards.
In this specific call, they finally revealed some explosive growth metrics. They named the soccer game FIFA and the original game Unhinged as their two most successful cloud game debuts, putting them in the absolute top tier of performance.
And the growth rate they cited is almost hard to believe. Since last October, so just 8 months prior to this earnings call, monthly active players for their cloud games have increased by 11 times.
Not 11%, an 11x multiplier.
Which is wild. It's not just adults playing sports games. They discussed Netflix Playground, which is their dedicated app for kids games that features absolutely zero ads and no in-app purchases.
A huge selling point for parents.
Huge. Daily players on Playground have grown 3x since launch, driving overall kids' mobile gaming engagement up 600% year over year.
The underlying strategy of their cloud gaming bet is entirely focused on removing friction. Think about the traditional gaming industry.
It's so expensive.
It requires a massive upfront financial investment. You have to buy a $500 plastic console, then pay $70 per individual game, then wait hours for massive files to download, and constantly manage your hard drive storage space.
It is an incredibly high barrier to entry that locks out millions of casual players who just want to kill 20 minutes.
Cloud gaming destroys that barrier entirely. The heavy computing, the processing of the graphics, and the physics of the game is all done on remote Netflix servers miles away. So your phone isn't doing the work. Right. The server simply streams the video of the game to your phone or television, while taking your controller inputs in real time. Netflix's ultimate goal is to make jumping into a high-end, complex game like FIFA as frictionless as pressing play on an episode of Stranger Things.
You just click the title and you are instantly playing.
Exactly. And because access to the game is included in your existing monthly subscription, the financial barrier to entry is completely eliminated.
But giving everyone these frictionless, high-end games alongside live global sports broadcasts and exclusive celebrity podcasts, that creates an unimaginably massive financial burden.
It costs a fortune.
Right. How do you pay for the everything store without hiking the subscription price so high that people cancel and protest?
This is where we see the sophisticated financial engineering that makes this entire content engine possible. Netflix is executing a highly nuanced, multi-tiered monetization strategy involving advertising technology, targeted promotional pricing, and unique international partnerships.
Okay, let's dive into the advertising strategy first, because it is the absolute engine of their future growth. The management team stated they are managing the ad business for total revenue growth.
Right.
They pointed out that historically there has been a gap between the average revenue per member, which they call ARM on the ad tier, versus the ARM on the standard tier without ads. But they noted that this gap is rapidly narrowing.
This is a crucial concept for retail investors to grasp.
Let me bring in a real-world parallel to explain this concept of the ARM gap, because it operates a lot like the airline industry.
Okay, let's hear it.
Years ago, airlines realized they could make more money by unbundling their services, right? They offer you a basic economy ticket for a seemingly cheap price, let's say $100.
Right, gets you in the door.
But then they charge you $40 for a carry-on bag, $30 to pick your seat, and $15 for Wi-Fi. By the end of the flight, the airline has extracted $185 from you, which is actually more than the guy who just bought the standard $150 ticket up front.
Yep.
Netflix is basically running a digital version of this exact playbook.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. Let's look at the actual math for Netflix. Say a standard ad-free Netflix subscription costs $15 a month. Netflix makes exactly $15 from that user. End of story.
Right.
Now, the ad-supported tier might cost the user just $8.99 out of pocket. Netflix is collecting significantly less money directly from the consumer's credit card.
But they are making it up on the back end.
Yes. They're also collecting revenue from the massive brands who are paying a premium to show unskippable commercials to that specific user. The ARM gap is the difference between the flat $15 they make from the premium user versus the combined total they make from the ad-supported user, so the $8.99 fee, plus all the advertising revenue generated over the month.
So if management is telling Wall Street that the gap is narrowing, it means the ad-supported user is becoming incredibly lucrative.
It goes further than that, actually. Netflix stated that they view this narrowing gap as, quote, near-term underrealized revenue growth.
Meaning there is still money on the table.
Exactly. Every single time, they improve their underlying ad technology by expanding their automated demand sources, improving demographic targeting, or simply increasing the fill rate.
Wait, explain fill rate really quick.
Oh, sure. Fill rate just means ensuring every single ad slot actually has a paying commercial in it, rather than just dead air or a house promo.
Got it.
As they improve that ad tech, they command higher prices from advertisers. As that tech gets sharper, that user paying only $8.99 out of pocket becomes just as profitable, and eventually more profitable, than the premium user paying double for the ad-free experience.
It's a psychological masterpiece. The user feels like they are getting a fantastic deal at $8.99, which, let's be honest, is a highly accessible price point in this economy, while Netflix is actually building an infinitely scalable revenue engine on the back end that isn't capped by subscription fees.
And maintaining that accessible price point is the key to global domination. They need a price tier for every single income bracket. But they aren't just relying on their own App Store presence to get in front of users anymore.
Right, the partnerships.
Yeah. A massive portion of this earnings call featured a brand new partnership they just launched in France with a legacy broadcast network called TF1.
They were only 4 weeks into this TF1 integration during the call, but the executives were remarkably optimistic about the early data. They essentially integrated TF1 directly into the Netflix interface.
That's fascinating.
It adds this massive library of local French programming seamlessly into the Netflix ecosystem, but it keeps the TF1 brand visually distinct within the app.
This TF1 partnership is not just a cool French experiment. It is the vital strategic template for the next decade of streaming.
Why is that?
Historically, the narrative was that Netflix was this ruthless disruptor that was going to destroy traditional legacy television networks. Now, they're partnering with them. By acting as the primary distributor for local legacy networks in foreign countries, Netflix is essentially transitioning into the default cable box of the internet.
They become the infrastructure.
Yes. Consider the alternative for a local network like TF1. They could spend billions trying to build their own streaming app, fighting for App Store placement, and managing complicated billing systems.
Which is a nightmare.
Or Netflix comes to them and says, let us host your content. We have unparalleled global reach, the best-in-class product experience, and industry-leading ad monetization. We will maximize the value of your shows by putting them in front of our massive audience.
It instantly enhances the local variety for Netflix members in France, and it gives TF1 a modern, frictionless distribution platform without all the tech overhead.
It's a win-win.
The TF1 deal is basically Netflix looking at legacy television across the globe and saying, if you can't beat them, host them. Instead of trying to destroy every local network and replace their content, just become the unavoidable infrastructure that they all rely on to survive.
Which makes Netflix indispensable.
Right. But I have a major question about their growth tactics, and this was heavily scrutinized by an analyst on the call regarding acquisition tests.
Oh, the free trials.
Yes. It turns out Netflix is quietly testing the return of free trials in certain markets for non-rejoining new members. They also mentioned successfully using a low-cost, first-month promotional discount during the World Baseball Classic in Japan.
This raised a lot of eyebrows.
I have to push back here. If Netflix is the undisputed, invincible, global king of streaming, isn't bringing back free trials a massive sign of weakness? Isn't it a huge red flag that they finally hit a wall in finding organic new users who are willing to just pull out their credit card and pay up front?
It is very easy to look at a free trial and interpret it as an act of corporate desperation. A blunt tool used only when organic growth stalls out completely.
That's what it looks like to me.
However, management reframed this entirely during the call. They view these promotions not as a retreat, but as highly surgical instruments. Over the years, they have invested heavily in back-end product capabilities that allow them to run hyper-targeted algorithmic tests in specific markets under highly specific conditions without affecting the rest of the global user base.
So this is not the old strategy of a blanket 30 days free for everyone banner on the homepage.
Not at all. It's highly contextual and data-driven. The Japan example is perfect. Their data told them the World Baseball Classic was going to generate a massive, localized cultural phenomenon.
Right.
They strategically deployed a low-cost, first-month promotional offer exactly at that moment to capture as much of that specific baseball-obsessed audience as possible. They actively reduced the friction of signing up just to watch the games, knowing that once those users were inside the ecosystem, the back aisles of kids' animation and prestige dramas would retain them.
Okay, that makes sense for an event. But what about the non-rejoining members?
Right. Now they are testing free trials for a very specific cohort, non-rejoining new members. These are people who have never, ever had a Netflix account in their lives.
Which is a shrinking group.
Exactly. They are using these promotions as a scalpel to carve out the absolute final remaining pockets of the addressable market that have, for whatever reason, resisted subscribing for the last 15 years.
It's essentially dynamic pricing for user acquisition. And interestingly, when an analyst asked if they would launch a FAST channel, which stands for free ad-supported streaming TV, basically a free channel of their older archival content running 2004/7 with heavy commercials like traditional cable, they shot it down.
Real quick.
Yeah, they said they have no near-term plans for FAST channels. They want people entirely inside the premium subscription ecosystem, even if the initial entry point is subsidized by a trial.
They firmly believe that the core product is strong enough that if they can just get you to create an account, their algorithmic retention metrics will keep you paying.
But to keep scaling this ecosystem efficiently, to afford the multi-billion-dollar sports rights, the cloud gaming infrastructure, and the massive global productions, they aren't just optimizing their marketing and pricing tiers.
No, the biggest shift is in production.
Yes, there is a detail hidden in the back half of this transcript that fundamentally rewrites the rules of how content itself is manufactured.
And this brings us to the elephant in the room, the technology reshaping every single industry on Earth, and Hollywood is clearly no exception. Generative AI.
There is immense anxiety in the creative community regarding AI, obviously, but Netflix revealed on this call that they are already using generative AI tools across roughly 300 different titles.
300 titles. This is no longer a small R&D experiment happening in a basement lab.
No, it's everywhere.
This technology is actively deployed at scale across their global pipeline. They specifically named internal proprietary tools on the call, like Interpositive, Eyeline, and their dedicated animation lab. They stated that Gen AI is currently scaling across the entire creative lifecycle, from concept to previs, right through to post-production and final delivery.
We need to define some of this industry jargon to understand the true impact. When they talk about previs, short for pre-visualization, this is the process of digitally storyboarding incredibly complex action sequences or sci-fi scenes before a single camera rolls.
Right, which used to take forever.
Historically, this required teams of expensive animators working for weeks. Now, AI can generate these storyboards instantly based on a director's text prompts.
The massive time saver.
And what about these tools like interpositive and eyeline?
Interpositive traditionally refers to a middle stage in traditional film processing, but in this context, it refers to AI-driven tools that can instantly match lighting, color grading, and film grain across hundreds of disparate shots, saving thousands of hours in the coloring bay.
Wow.
But eyeline is perhaps the most fascinating. Imagine shooting a deeply emotional scene with a highly paid A-list actor.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And in the editing room, you realize the actor wasn't looking at the right spot. Their eyeline is slightly off, completely ruining the emotional connection. In the past, you either lived with the bad take or you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring the entire crew and the actor back for a reshoot.
Which ruins budgets.
Right. With AI eyeline tools, you simply instruct the algorithm to digitally adjust the actor's gaze in post-production. It subtly moves their eyes without altering their performance.
That is wild. Management made a fascinating philosophical point about this deployment. They argued that in the past, directors and showrunners would frequently have to abandon their most ambitious, creative ideas.
Because of money.
Exactly. They would have to leave key shots out of the script entirely because they simply couldn't afford the visual effects, or they couldn't execute them within the punishingly tight television production timeframes.
This gets to the core of how Netflix is pitching AI adoption to an incredibly skeptical Hollywood labor force.
Yeah, they have to be careful here.
Very. Netflix management went out of their way to repeatedly insist that AI will not replace human artists. Their stated corporate stance is that it takes great artists to make something great. Movies are fundamentally made by people. AI, in their view, is simply an empowering tool that provides creators with better, faster, and cheaper ways to bring their visions to life.
It rescues sequences that would have otherwise ended up in the trash due to budget constraints.
Exactly. And they didn't just offer corporate platitudes. They provided a stunning, quantifiable proof of concept during the call.
Yes, the documentary.
They just released a documentary series called American Experiment. The executives proudly stated to investors that this specific series features exactly 17 minutes of completely AI-enhanced footage.
And the metrics tied to those 17 minutes are what the financial analysts on the call just zeroed in on. That specific AI-generated footage was produced twice as fast and at exactly half the cost of historical traditional VFX options.
I want the listener to really realize this because it changes everything.
Go for it.
Imagine you are a documentary filmmaker trying to tell a story about a massive Civil War battle where obviously no archival footage exists. 10 years ago, to visualize that scene, you had to hire 500 human background extras, feed them lunch, pay for 500 period-accurate wool uniforms, and rent a massive field.
Or you hired a massive CGI team to spend months rendering it at a cost of millions.
Right. Today, using these generative tools, Netflix shoots 10 guys in a field, and the AI algorithm perfectly hallucinates the other 490 soldiers, right down to the specific mud on their boots and the smoke from their muskets.
It's unbelievable.
AI isn't just a better paintbrush, which is the cliche everyone uses. AI is a completely free, infinite digital backlot, where the sets build themselves, the lighting is always perfect, and the background extras work for free. It completely changes the physical real estate and the economics of filmmaking.
It really does. And from a financial perspective, Netflix argues that the massive cost savings generated by these AI efficiencies won't just sit in a corporate bank account padding the margins.
No, they say they'll reinvest it.
Right. They claim those savings will be reinvested directly into creating more content on the service. This fuels their high-quality engagement flywheel. You lower the cost of production, you increase the variety of the catalog, you increase member satisfaction, and you justify the subscription fee.
But the counter-argument here is severe.
Let's hear it.
Netflix management says AI is just a tool for creators, a co-pilot. And sure, saving money on rendering background crowds is great for the bottom line. But if you are suddenly generating complex 17-minute cinematic sequences twice as fast at half the cost, doesn't that inherently put immense existential pressure on human production crews?
Of course it does.
If you are a traditional VFX artist, a matte painter, or a background actor, you are now forced to compete against the speed and the zero marginal cost of an algorithm. How long until that digital backlot starts generating the main characters too?
That is the profound, unresolved tension underlying this entire technological shift in Hollywood. Netflix is aggressively framing AI as an empowering tool to avoid labor strikes and creative boycotts.
Understandably so.
And right now in 2026, it is primarily being deployed for storyboarding, color correction, and post-production background enhancements. But as we all know, generative technology is advancing exponentially, not linearly.
The line is blurring.
The line between a tool that lightly enhances a scene and an engine that entirely generates a scene from scratch is blurring rapidly. This is the ultimate balancing act for Netflix's next decade. How do they harvest the massive, undeniable financial efficiencies of tech-driven production without losing the human soul, the imperfections, and the emotional resonance that actually makes viewers care about a story in the first place?
And it's those massive financial efficiencies that are generating absolute rivers of cash, which leads us to the final piece of this Q2 earnings puzzle: capital allocation.
Right. When you are generating this much profit from subscriptions, ads, and AI-driven cost savings, how do you spend it?
Well, during the Q&A portion of the call, several analysts brought up swirling industry rumors that Netflix was finally looking to buy legacy Hollywood studios, specifically naming Lionsgate and NBC Universal.
Which would be massive.
It would. But management flat out denied this, stating clearly and firmly that their core corporate philosophy remains unchanged. They are, quote, builders, not buyers.
They noted they have a notoriously high bar for M&A mergers and acquisitions.
Exactly. And the ultimate proof of their financial health and their arrogance, in the best sense of the word, isn't in buying a decaying legacy studio. It's in how they treat their own stock.
Give us the bottom line for the investors listening.
They revealed that they repurchased $4.7 billion of their own shares in Q2 alone. That is the largest single quarter of share repurchase in the entire history of the company. And they still have $27 billion in capacity remaining on their board authorizations.
Let that number sink in. They generated so much cash from this massive engagement engine that they literally took $4.7 billion in a single 3-month period and just bought their own stock to increase shareholder value.
It's a massive signal.
They are looking at the entire media landscape, looking at the catalogs of NBC, Universal, and Paramount, and deciding they don't need to buy them. They'd rather build their own ad tech, create their own global IP out of old regional novels, fund their own cloud gaming infrastructure, and just buy back their own stock.
It is the ultimate flex of corporate confidence. They are signaling to Wall Street and to their competitors that the absolute highest return on investment they can find anywhere in the global media landscape is simply investing in themselves.
It is a remarkable picture of a company operating at the absolute zenith of its power, playing a completely different sport than the traditional television networks it originally sought to replace.
It really is.
When we look back at the origins of this company, the Netflix of 2026 is a completely unrecognizable entity from where they started. If you rewind the clock to 2013, they had exactly one prestige, English language, scripted drama, House of Cards.
Just one.
As Ted Sarandos joked on this very call, back then, they didn't even know if it technically counted as television or if it would even be allowed to qualify for an Emmy Award.
And today, they are the undisputed #1 creator of original programming around the world. But as we've uncovered in this transcript, they are no longer just a television network.
Not at all.
They are a frictionless cloud gaming company. They are a live global sports broadcaster. They are a daytime podcasting platform colonizing your morning commute. And they are an AI-enhanced production studio completely rewriting the economics of filmmaking.
They are all of these massive, disparate industries, seamlessly masquerading as a simple red app on your phone.
Well said.
So here's your takeaway for today. Tonight, when you crash on the couch, I want you to turn on your TV and just look at your Netflix homepage. Don't click play on your show right away.
Just look at the architecture.
Exactly. Notice the vertical video clips pushing daytime podcasts. Notice the live sports promos sitting next to the prestige dramas. Notice the cloud games available right on your phone. Realize that every single pixel of that interface, every piece of content that is surfaced to you at that specific time of day, is the result of a heavily scrutinized, multi-billion-dollar engagement equation.
It is an engine designed to capture not just your evening leisure time, but every single fraction of your daily attention.
It is a masterpiece of algorithmic engineering, perfectly balanced to deliver the exact mathematical ratio of quality, variety, and quantity to keep you engaged, and honestly, to keep you paying.
That's the bottom line.
But I want to leave you with a final, lingering thought to ponder as you look at that screen. We've seen how generative AI is currently saving millions of dollars in post-production, rendering backgrounds and generating digital crowds for historical battles and shows like American Experiment.
Right.
But as these tools advance exponentially and become completely indistinguishable from reality, what happens when an entirely AI-generated series with no human actors, no human directors, and no human camera operators lands in the Netflix top 10?
It's coming.
Will we as viewers actually care if there was a human being behind the story, as long as the engagement equation hits the right psychological metric?
That is the big question.
Think about that the next time you press play. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the machinery of our culture. Keep asking questions, keep looking behind the drywall, and we will see you next time.